Watched it on like on the way here and like while getting ready this morning and stuff. And I was like, did you watch the video? Huh?
Well, my computer says it's 8 a.m. So time to start. Welcome, everybody. Excited for the start of the new school year. Summer went by way too fast.
Yes.
Yes, it did. So presumably everybody got the announcement I sent out via Canvas about our Canvas site, right? And so everybody has endured that marathon, which was my introductory video, right? Well, one of the reasons why I don't do that in class is because it's a freaking marathon. What can I say? There's just a lot to cover about this course. So if you've got questions, we'll try to knock those off at the start of the class here before we get into some content. You'll note that I have what amounts to a sound studio sitting up here. This is a holdover from the COVID days when COVID hit a few years ago, which most of you probably remember, and everybody kind of got sent home abruptly. We had to embrace technology, and we had to embrace it without the institution actually paying for any of it. So I actually own this sound system here. And what I discovered in using it is it's actually a great way to record class. It was my first experience of doing recording, and I should probably make sure that we are actually recording this. Yes, we are. That the Zoom recordings were actually smaller in size, and frankly, I think better quality than what I was getting when I was doing screen recordings of what I was doing in the past. Anyway, I will Zoom record every lecture. That doesn't mean anybody's going to be attending on Zoom, but that is just for your benefit in case you want to go back and re-listen to anything. And I'm pretty good about posting those pretty quickly, although if you don't see something posted that you want, barring me having some sort of a technical difficulty, and that's always a possibility when you're dealing with things that you plug into the wall or attach to a battery, you'll have a recording to go back to every class session that we have. I do run a Zoom session, so as we are reminded by a couple of you who are still wearing masks, if you are not feeling good, it's probably best to go ahead and stay home. Drop me a note and I will give you a link to the Zoom so you can attend via Zoom. That's a possibility for every lecture because every lecture is Zooming, okay? But me recording lectures and doing them on Zoom is not a substitute for attendance. There is so much data that just suggests that everybody learns better if you're here. And I know it's early in the morning, but I actually am very much a morning person. Before this class is over, you will be wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, looking at emails. I'm probably sending you at 4 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, I know. Yeah, students often joke that I'm sending them an email. I'm getting up to send them an email when they're going to bed. So, it's just, I don't know. God made me that way. I just am an early riser. And so I'm usually in my office by 6 a.m., to get work done. It's nice quiet time for me to work for a couple of hours before all you guys start showing up. So, that's kind of a good thing. Anyway, so that will be available for you to use as a study tool, Zoom lectures. What else do I need to say? Do you have any questions about the course that kind of came to mind when you were watching the video, reading the syllabus that I can answer for you in that. Yes.
I have a quick question about the Zoom meetings. So if we're out of town or we're traveling for some reason and we're not able to make the lecture in person, but can
Absolutely.
we use the Zoom link?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
So a lot of things in the video kind of mentioned like condensed and stuff because it was from fall last year, and like a lot of things were mentioned that like we record our like presentations and stuff, and we
No,
take-
so here's the deal with that. We won't be recording presentations unless we get really far behind.
Okay.
And then I may shift to something like that. So, a lot of that, a lot of these prior recordings, and, I probably will redo it at some point, but there are relatively few things that are impacted by that in terms of just the raw course structure. What we'll generally do instead, we will try to do if we get behind is one of the things that you're going to find with our lab in this class, it's a very atypical lab. There will be more weeks where we don't formally meet than there are that we do. Okay, for all of you, we will have probably over the course of the semester, and I may be off by one, maybe 6 required meetings at our lab time. And this is because the nature of the surgeries is such that it's an all-day affair, pretty much. And so, when you meet when you have surgeries, and the surgeries the big rapid surgery will start in October. You'll be here for a week to do that on a Thursday, and that'll be something you devote your Thursday to, and then you won't meet the next week. You get the next week off. There's just no way for me to reflect. I wish there was a way I could reflect that in a course schedule, but it's just not possible. So we just try to communicate to everybody that's just kind of the way it is. We will meet for lab the next 2 weeks. I think I'm straying from your question, but
No, you're totally good. This
Yeah.
is my next question, so you're fine.
yeah, we will meet for lab this Thursday and next Thursday. This Thursday is going to be a practice thyroidectomy because much of the next month and a half is going to be in a thyroid project. And then the following Thursdays, you'll actually do a thyroidectomy on rats. You'll inherit your rats those days, which become your babies for like the next month and a half. And then after that, we will not meet formally on Thursday because you'll be doing your projects, and take my word for it, when I absolutely get my pound of flesh for you in terms of lab time during your projects. So, and we will introduce the lab. Actually, there's a pre-lab video for you to watch before Thursday that will introduce the lab to you, and then we will address questions in lab. And I appreciate the fact you guys took the time to watch all that stuff. It saves me a lot of time. Yeah.
Sorry, continuing on that question, are exams still going to be like online or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am a non-paper person. I am all about saving a tree. And so I do not use paper in this class. So everything that we have will be distributed to you as a PDF, or it will be just, or testing will be done via Canvas, and we will use the Respondus browser until that fails on us. That's a long story. And in fact, I have a free 10 points that you will all get. How many of you have used the Respondus browser? Most of you have. Well, even so, there is a short little practice quiz that will be on Canvas that will ask you to go through the process of setting up the Respondus browser, make sure that you don't have issues, and get that done so that all of the issues are dealt with before we have our first exam. And if you watch the video, you know that I don't do exams in the typical manner. I am not a believer in time-limited exams. Nobody has ever asked me in my entire career, which has spanned well more than 40 years, to produce a product in 50 minutes. And so my exams are not time-limited. which is why I use the Respondus browser. It allows me to let you sit down and just chug through it in whatever time it takes. Some of you will still do it in an hour. On average, students will generally take, you know, an hour and a half to 2 hours to get it done. And the reason being is, you know, like one of the components of the exam is going to be an essay, and I would much rather get your best work than your time limited work. And if you want to sit down and outline what you want to write on your essay, you know, by all means, take the time to do that. The big danger in this approach is some of you will way overthink answers to questions, particularly multiple choice questions. And my advice to you, yeah, she's writing it down. That's smart. Don't overthink. My advice to you is your gut is right more times than it's wrong. It is far more common for somebody to take a right answer and convert it to a wrong answer than the other way around. It probably is 2 to 1. So if you're going to make a change, have a really good reason for making the change. Don't talk yourself into something that just isn't true. It does happen. The other bit of advice that I will give everybody is, so as you know, if you watch the video, my exams have 3 components. They have multiple choice, definitions, and an essay. The key thing about those definitions is to remember that they are all worth 3 points, which is 3% of the exam. Okay, so put that in perspective. It is very rare that a single sentence will be adequate to define a term. You'll see that with every term I have this sentence above it that says define within the context of the course. So if you give me just a straight dictionary definition, that's probably not going to be enough. If you are concerned about being adequate when it comes to defining within the context of the course, just give me an example of how it's used in physiology. And that will generally suffice as context. Does that make sense? So it is also never going to be necessary for you to write a paragraph. And some of you will get overzealous with that. There's no penalty for it. It just means it takes me longer to read through your answers. But in general, 2 to 3 sentences is usually enough to define a term. Yeah.
Regarding the essay, will we have any sort of prompting as to what topic that will be on? Or is it just
No.
Okay.
My essays are essays that that give you a lot of latitude in answer. So I restrict you to 700 words, which is approximately the number of words you could stick on a page, single space. That's because I can't save one page in a digital format. And so that will never be sufficient to completely answer any question I ask you. And that's intentional, because I want you to make choices about what the most important things to you. That doesn't necessarily mean that if you and I disagree on what the most important things happen to be, that you will get penalized for that. Because if you are convincing that your thoughts are solid, then I'll be good with that. I am not one who will ever penalize anybody because we don't see eye to eye on something, as long as you can convince me that what you're thinking is solid. One of the other things you're going to learn about me is I like to tell stories. I'm going to tell you a story right now. When I was a college student, I had a professor in a literature class who we read a book. It was called Billy Budd. Okay, and we had to write an essay on the book. And when we came into class one day, she said there were 8 A's on this essay. It was a fairly large class. And she started handing them out. And I didn't get one. And then she said, I want to say something about this particular essay. The student who wrote this wrote things that I really did not agree with, but he supported it so well that that it was totally worth it. That the level of respect I gained for that professor at that moment, because that was my paper, was, I mean, it was immeasurable. So my goal as a professor is to help you guys become thinkers, not to help you become clones of me. I mean, that's silly. It would be a really boring world if everybody were clones of me. Okay. I want you guys to become thinkers. And, you know, for that reason, the bar in this class, you know, I'll put gray hairs in your head, you know, before this class is over. But if you go back and talk to anybody who has completed this class, they will look back fondly at what they gained from doing it. And so, you know, in talking to your classmates, I'm sure you've heard that this is one of the hardest courses in our curriculum. It's been compared to organic chemistry on occasions, you know, I have some very now renowned doctors and scientists who still write me and talk about the value of the experiences they gained in this class. My goal is to make you a thinker. Anything else? All right, shall we go on? First thing we're going to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, because other than one person that I see in here, I'm not sure anybody has taken a class from me before. You probably heard a lot about my classes, but anyway, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. Can you see that okay if I leave the lights on? Yeah. All righty. All righty. So I was born in 1957. That is a long time ago. Okay. That makes me 65 years old. I actually have a Medicare card. There you go. I was born in La Jolla, California, which is a suburb of San Diego, where only people with money these days live. That wasn't the case back when I was born. It's funny because my grandparents bought a house 3 blocks up from Bird Rock in La Jolla, if any of you are familiar with that area, for $5,000. My aunt sold that house for some ridiculously 7-figure number about 10 years ago. You know, it just, and then they tore the house down and built some modern space age looking thing there. Just really, but anyway, that's where I was born. I grew up most of my years in Southern California area. In 1975, I graduated high school. You guys weren't even a twinkle in 1975. And there I am. Bassett High School, which is located in La Puente, California, which is in the San Gabriel Valley, which is LA County, for those of you who are familiar with that area. And I immediately went to college after that. I went to BIOL College, which is now BIOL University. Graduated in 1979. And so you can see, I actually did have hair back in those days. It is thinning rather quickly. And it's not that color anymore, but that's okay. But I did sport a mustache back then. Picked that up probably about my sophomore year. Okay. Then once finishing BIOL College, I wandered off back to San Diego State, to do a master's degree in ecology. So there I am in my master's garb. I actually landed at San Diego State because my wife, whom I will talk about in a minute, that I met when I was in college at Biola, was doing a med tech training program in San Diego. So I decided I would land there as well. Did a master's degree in ecology, and I'll tell a story about you know, how I got started doing what I was doing there in a little bit. And then in 1989, I finished a PhD at the University of California, Davis in physiological ecology. That's when I became a physiologist. You'll hear some stories about that before the class is over as well. And then immediately after finishing my PhD, I landed on the campus of then George Fox College. I actually have a picture of a sign that says George Fox College before we got on the bandwagon to convert ourselves to a university. That light's glaring a little bit. Let's turn that off. There we go. So there is my svelte self moving into my office, which was in that building over there. What is now called Lemon Center was called Calder Center back in those days. It didn't take me long to realize that that building was some architect's nightmare. I had a pie-shaped office with no windows. When I came here, I was one of 2 faculty in biology, me and Dale Orkney. And Dale's picture is on the wall out there. And I replaced a fellow by the name of Elver Voth, who was still alive when I came here, but wouldn't be very long. He was dying of cancer, which is why I took that spot. Okay. So I've been here since 1989. I've been here for 33 years. This is the start of my 34th year here. I am the old man in the department. I'm the old man in this department by a lot of years, actually. So there is me today. That is my wife, Theo, which is short for Theodora. We met in college and we started dating when I was a sophomore. She may have been actually a junior or close to being a junior. She was a semester ahead of me. She's 6 months older than I am, so she's a total cougar. But anyway, we started dating when I was a sophomore at BIOL. And then in July, after graduating in 1979, we got hitched. And we've made it work for 43 years as of last July 14th. So anyway, it's been a great 43 years too. Our life changed dramatically in 1984 when Sean David Powers came along. Sean, who is an alumni of George Fox, was a really easy child to raise. In fact, you know, as he was growing up, getting old, he said, "Why does everybody think this is so hard?" Because it wasn't with him. Okay. Here is Sean today with my daughter-in-law Carly. Sean, they live in Richmond, Virginia. Sean is a PhD candidate at Virginia Commonwealth University with expected to finish this fall. So soon there will be another Dr. Powers in family. He's taken the long road to get there because he's 38 years old. So you can do the math. But anyway, they live in Richmond, Virginia, East Coast, which is not fun. Okay. About a year and a half after Sean came around, came son number 2, Ryan Daniel Powers. You'll note that tomorrow will be his 37th birthday. Okay. Today, here is Ryan right here, but you probably could have guessed that. My daughter-in-law, Hillary, and my big time pride and joy, my grandson, Cody. More about him on the next slide, and granddog, Titus. So talking about my family would not be complete without mentioning Zoe. Zoe came to us in 2007 and was a huge part of our family until 2020 when she contracted bone cancer in one of her forelimbs, and we had to put her down, which was a really, really sad day. Although, you know, it was a decision we made it a week before we did it. And we had a very joyous week. I would go home from work early for that week and go out in our front yard, sit underneath our cherry trees that only makes these really tiny cherries, and Zoe would sit there and just start eating all those things, and I would just say, knock yourself out. Those aren't gonna kill you. So, you know, and the day we put her down, it was a Saturday, July 17th was the date. And I remember I have a lot of former students who are vets. And so I sent a message to all of them to see if they knew anybody that made house calls to do this sort of thing. And Melody Williams, who graduated many, many years ago, is a vet just outside of Corvallis. And she messages me back and says, you don't need anybody else. I'm going to come and do this. And so she came to my house on this, it was a very nice sunny day. And I should put a picture of this, but we put her down, we had her cremated, and then my wife and I, we built this garden outside our office window at home that we call the Zoe Garden. And every plant that we put in the ground, we put a scoop of her ashes in it. And so we have that garden that allows us to remember. She was a very big part of our family for 13 years. And if any of you are dog people, you know what that's like. Okay, did I say I just really like my grandson? So this child is like a big time answer to prayer. I was asking God for a grandchild. I cannot tell you. Understand, my kids, they're 37 and 38. So we're not talking spring chickens here. All right. And, you know, I used to think they were raised by a biologist. They know how this works, you know, but no grandchildren. And then back early in 2020, my son calls me as I'm walking home. We went through this stretch where we were a one-car family. My wife works home health. And so she had the car, my beloved Jeep Liberty died, and so I was walking everywhere, you know. That's okay, I like to walk. So he calls me while I'm walking home from campus one day and says, is mom with you? And I said, you know she's not with me, she's at work. And he goes, oh, well, we were hoping to FaceTime with you, which was an odd request at that time of day. And I said, well, we can do that when she gets home. So, okay. So, you know, we call him back that evening and we're on FaceTime and we're having this normal chit chat. And then all of a sudden, Ryan says, oh, by the way, Dad, you know what this is? And he plops this ultrasound up onto the phone. And I lost it. I lost it. And that was an answer to prayer. Now, of course, COVID was just descending on us at that time. And so he was born on October 17th, 2020. We didn't get to see him until January, you know. And I cannot begin to tell you how hard that was. But these pictures are here from our last visit because they live in Brooklyn, by the way. Now, I told you what Sean did. I didn't tell you what Carly did. Carly she's also a George Fox alum. And she is a marriage and family counselor. And she's in private practice in Richmond. Ryan and Hillary actually met back at UC Davis. Ryan was born literally 8 miles from UC Davis. And they were in an enology viticulture program. So they were winemakers. She decided she didn't want to be a winemaker anymore. And so she started attending business classes, then took some entrance exam for MBA programs and just killed it. Got into the MBA program at Cornell. So Ryan quit his job at his winery. They hopped on bicycles and they rode across the country, 53 days from Mill Valley, California to Coney Island, New York. Ryan was an athlete. He was a soccer player. He played 3 sports in high school. He was a soccer player through college. He played at Whitworth. He would not come to the school that his dad was teaching at. And well, there was a price he paid for that, but you know, that was his choice. But now, you know, to make a long story short, making wine in New York didn't work out. He taught himself to code, went to a 3-month coding boot camp in New York City and got hired by Bloomberg. And now makes 6 times what he made making wine. Okay. Go figure. Hillary finished the MBA program. She is now an investment banker, works for a boutique investment firm in Manhattan, and makes more than Ryan does. So they make a ridiculous. In fact, I told Ryan, I said, it's my turn to get an allowance. So anyway, so they live in Brooklyn, where it's ridiculously expensive to live. They have a 3rd floor, 1,400 square foot apartment that's really old that they pay $4,500 a month for. It would cost them $2 million to buy that thing. Yeah, it's on another financial planet than I could possibly exist on because I work at George Fox University. But anyway, that's my grandson, and that is his real name, Cody Danger. The middle name Danger, I'm going to spend all my time, I'm not going to get any content today, but that's okay. The middle name Danger is a fun way of them naming him after his dad. Because when Ryan was working for Domaine Serene, which is a winery up in the Dundee Hills here, he crawled into a crush without turning it off, which could sort of like kill you. And so they nicknamed him Danger. So that's where that came from. And the greatest news I got this year is grandson number 2 in November. I told Teresa we have to get a second door for my office. If you've gone by my office and seen all my pictures, I put some new ones up though. All right. So there is my home. It's about a mile from campus here, which is why I can walk. That's back when the bark dust looked good. Some hobbies I have. I love to bird watch. I teach ornithology here. By the way, if anybody needs or has a desire to take a fun class, I need some more students in ornithology. Right now, I got 5, and I need to try as best I can to get to 10. Yeah.
I can vouch for that because I took it 2 years.
That's right. You did.
I did.
So if you know anybody who needs a class in the spring, it's fun. I make it fun. There's not a lot of writing, unlike this class. So anyway, I love to bird watch. This is me actually in Central Park in New York with my binoculars, which I take with me everywhere I go. I love to cook. Cooking was a late hobby for me. When I was a college student, my idea of making lunch was to plop 3 hot dogs in a percolating coffee pot. Do you guys even know what a percolating coffee pot is? It's one of these coffee pots that you plug into the wall, and it used to spurt water up, and then it would go down through the grounds, but it would heat water up, and I figured I could eat a hot dog in that. So that's what I did. My at the time, girlfriend, future wife was making me little casseroles. I would stick them in autoclaves to heat them up, I mean, yeah. I was a student, It is what it is. But I'm still here. So anyway, it made it sterile, what can I say? So anyway, but there was this week when my wife had a really hard week. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna make her a really nice dinner. And so I got online and tried to find a fun or a recipe that sounded like it would really taste good. I don't know how many of you are familiar with celebrity chefs, but I found a recipe for chicken del Monaco by Emeril Lagasse. Okay, have any of you ever heard of Emeril Lagasse? Yeah. Well, there is not a recipe that he uses that doesn't have like 65 ingredients in it. And a third of those are impossible to get in a grocery store. But I made it. And she, to this day, tells me it was really good. And I discovered that cooking was very relaxing. And so I just started cooking more. Now I cook a lot. Things that I really like to do. I love to smoke meat. This is a meatloaf. And I smoke meatloaves. And if you've never had a smoked meatloaf, whoa. Okay. Okay. If you smoke meat, or if you have parents that smoke meat, tell them to smoke a meatloaf. It's really good. Anyway, that's a smoked meatloaf. I like to make fresh pasta. Yeah.
Sorry, this is super random. What about the smoke? Do you have a Traeger or?
I have an old fashioned, my smoker is like that. I monitor it. I have a pan for wood chips that I put in it, a pan for water, and 3 racks. And, you know, I have a digital thermometer I stick to the meat, and I tend that thing all day. You do not need a Traeger or a Yoder or any of those things to smoke meat. Those are for people who want to sit in a lounge chair and smoke their meat. Okay, I have to be home. So like when I do a brisket, it takes like 14 hours. Okay, yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, let me tell you, I have done this thing historically that hasn't happened the last few years because of COVID, that I call bond night. This year. Okay. It usually happens in March. Okay. So anyway, this thing that I call bond night, I usually make a 5-course meal with an ethnic theme, and then we watch a James Bond movie, and then we all laugh at the total sexism that goes on in James Bond movies. You know, it is what it is. It's something that I do. You know, I bring 16 to 20 of you over to my house, and we just have a good time for an evening, and you eat my food. And that's something that I've allowed Sigma Zeta to sponsor, but COVID has had put the kibosh on that. But if Sigma Zeta is up for it, I am totally, or even if they're not, I may just put it on myself. So just something to keep in mind. And nobody has ever not liked something that I've cooked. So there you go. Anyway, I like to make pasta. Our Christmas tradition is lasagna. And so this is the pasta that I made for that lasagna. So, and I threw this in here because my wife is a Pilates fiend. You know, she does Pilates, she does yoga, and this is us at Pacific City, and she just stopped on the beach, all of a sudden decided to start doing some stuff, you know. And that's Zoe back there looking at her and saying, better you than me. So there you go. Okay, as far as research goes, I'll go through this quickly. I study hummingbirds. You will hear about hummingbirds in this class periodically because they just are a great example of a lot of different types of extreme physiology. So while most of what I'm going to teach you is going to be focused on mammalian physiology, because I suspect that that's what most of you are interested in, I think there's real value in doing a little bit of comparative learning to learn how other things accomplish the tasks that you have to accomplish to sit in that chair and breathe. And to see how things have to be shifted when you're put in kind of a really extreme situation, understanding why studying physiology at the level of basic science is really important, because you know, you take something like a hummingbird that has the ability to use what we call torpor. It'll be the last thing that I teach you in our first section. It's a form of short-term, very deep hypothermia. And learning how that works can teach us a lot about slowing down the metabolism. Let's say you've got some sort of a chronic disease that you need time to deal with. Okay, is there a way to safely lower the metabolism of the body to prevent the bad outcome? Okay. Or who knows, maybe when we go to Mars, we're going to put people into some sort of hibernation, learning how to do that. So studying creatures like this, the physiology of creatures like this could be really, really helpful. Also trying to figure out how these little 3-gram birds that like weigh less than a penny can regulate body temperature. Go figure. So my story, clearly I'm not going to get to any content today, am I? I started on hummingbirds, and the common question I get is, how did you get into hummingbirds? This is back in my master's degree. I went to San Diego State to study marine invertebrates. Don't ask me why I was doing that, it just seemed like the thing to do. Then everybody and his mother, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, and dog were studying marine invertebrates at San Diego State. And I said, I do not want to be a face in the crowd. And I just sat down and realized my real passion was birds. There were 2 faculty at San Diego State that studied birds. George Cox and Gerald Cox. They both had the last name Cox. George Cox was normal, Gerald Cox was insane. So I went with George Cox. I walked into him and said, Dr. Cox, I want to study birds. And he goes, I'm your guy. What do you want to do? I said, I don't got a clue. He goes, that's okay. You think about it over the weekend. And then come back on Monday and we'll kick around some ideas for questions you could ask your master. Went over to the library at San Diego State, pulled a volume of a German ecology journal called Ecologia off the shelf. We actually had paper things back in those days. Opened it up, and the very first paper that I opened up to was a paper by Paul Ewald and Lynn Carpenter on feeding territoriality in male Anna's hummingbirds. And I said, hummingbirds are cool. I'm going to study hummingbirds. That's why I picked it. Now my focus. Cool thing about hummingbirds is the only birds that can engage in sustained hovering. They can hover for as long as they want, and they do that by flying like insects. So you'll note that when the bird is hovering here, the wings are moving like this. They're not moving like this. And notice that the wings turn over at the apex of both the up and down stroke. They're producing lift. And I actually published a paper in Nature on this. They actually produce lift on both the up and down stroke. And this is exactly how a lot of insects fly. Now my focus is on how they maintain body temperature while they're flying. And this is a topic that's related to climate change. So here's an infrared image that I took of a calliope hummingbird. And the reason why regulating body temperature is hard when birds fly is because note how that they're hot around the eye, the shoulder, and the feet here, but the rest of the body is much cooler. And that's because their feathers lay flat so they can stay aerodynamic. And they generate a lot of extra heat when they fly. So you all know when you exercise, you sweat. That's because your muscles are not very efficient. They're not mechanically efficient. And so a lot of the energy that goes to power them just gets converted to heat. And so these guys got to deal with that. Anyway, we may talk about that more later. And there's a lot of things left to learn. Watch how the feet, the bill, and then the leading edge of the wings here heat up. They're shunting blood to those areas. And one of the things I'm looking at right now is how important is dissipating heat that they gain during flight after they perch following fall. So it's one of the things I'm looking at. Okay. When you need help, I make this plea every year, and most of you won't follow. Okay. Please, please, please come and find me. Come and see me. Come ask me questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question. I can't help you if you don't come see me. All right. Whoops, back. I am a minimalist when it comes to office hours, and the reason being is that in 33 years, students never come during office hours. And so I figured if I reduce the number of office hours, it gives you guys more time to actually find times when you'll come and see me. I know that sounds weird, but it is the way it is. I will see you outside of office hours. I put office hours because somebody tells me I have to do that. If I'm not doing something, if I'm not engaged in something else and you need to chat, I will make that happen. Last year, I instituted a new way of scheduling an appointment with me, which I think worked really, really well, and the students seem to like it. And so I'm going to use that again this year. If you look on the syllabus and possibly on the welcome page in Canvas, I don't remember if I put it there or not, you'll see a link that says schedule an appointment with me. When you click on that link, it's going to take you to a web page that will show you my available times for the next 7 days. Okay, so you can see what days it's scheduling appointments for. So this was back before school started, and so you're only getting 3 days of the week. But every slot that has a time here is a time that I'm available to meet. And all you have to do is click on one of those times. You'll then get, it'll come up with this page here where you will enter your name. Please enter your name, enter your email. And then it says this is optional, but please tell me what it is you want to meet about. That helps me to get prepared to meet with you. And then you click on request a meeting. It'll plug you in, it'll send me a note, I will approve the meeting, and you will probably not get any sort of response, but if you've done that, the meeting will be scheduled. Okay. If you're concerned about that, just ask and I'll tell you that it's scheduled. But that way we don't have to have the email exchanges. You get a clear picture of when my available time slots are, and you can just plug yourself into something that's convenient for you. Okay. All right, how much time do we have? You know what? We have 6 minutes. So I am actually going to start here. Something real quick here. And I actually do not think that I was sharing my screen when I showed you all those stuff, but that's okay. That's not the important part. All right. So now I will share my screen. That's weird. Okay. Okay, you know what? I think I'm gonna call it a day because I have to quit Zoom and I don't want to do that. So y'all have any questions? Yes.
It's about the textbook. Is an ebook an acceptable
Sure.
format?
Sure. So yeah, the textbook's a good question. You do not have to have both textbooks, although you will be responsible for readings in both textbooks. Yeah, historically, I've done this for years, and y'all find ways to share textbooks or whatever. So please don't buy them too, unless you just have some deep-seated need to do that. And the other question I commonly get asked are older editions okay? Everything that I do is based on the current editions of textbooks. If you can make an older edition work, then more power to you. You know, I have no problem with that. But I generally am. Everything that is going to be in handouts with regard to page numbers for required readings. And by the way, that's where you will find the required reading in the text is in the lecture handouts that are on Canvas. I do not, if there's a required reading, I will test that over that, okay? And roughly, and I say roughly, about 10% of the exam will come from those required readings. So please do those because it's worthwhile. The readings are not that long. If I haven't required the reading, I will not draw questions from other portions of the text. The text is there for your support. Did that answer your question? Yeah, go ahead.
Are the editions that are in the video, those are the current editions that we should get?
Yes. No, the physiology is in a newer edition.
Okay.
Yeah, the physiology is actually in the next edition, which I think is the 5th. I think the 4th edition was in. Anyway, yeah, the physiology just came out in a new edition. The human phys is that one's still current.
Good
Yeah.
question.
Go ahead.
There's reading on the bottom of like the overview handout that was supposed to be for this class. Is that something you should do for next class? Something you should read before next class or wait until we get the lecture?
I'm not clear what you're talking about.
I think at the end of there's a handout for like, it was like overview and it had like reading at the bottom.
An overview of physiology?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the first lecture section.
Okay.
So yeah, that's in the first week.
So should we read that before next lecture or after?
You know, I would download it at the start of, when we start lecture, so I would download that so you have it. For me, the best strategy for handling required reading is to, when we get to the sections of our topic that is relevant to, and sometimes that may just be doing it at the end, to read it, take notes on it. And then tuck that away in your notes so that you don't have to go back to it. Pay attention to things like important people, important organisms, important experiments, important concepts, important terms. Those kinds of things. Okay. Any other questions?
I have one more question.
Sure.
So for the labs that we are meeting for, you're saying they're going to be a longer affair than often what's listed. What if we have a lab right after that? Do we have to come back later and make up time? Or can we...
No. So if you have a lab after that, having a lab after our scheduled lab time is not a horrible thing, because our lab goes till 2 something, I think, or 3 something actually. And so that just, for most of you, when you're doing on surgery days, the smart groups will come in early in the morning and get started, and then we'll all be done by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, most likely. And the thing about lab is, you know, we have 14 students in this class, which means I'm going to go with 3 lab groups. There'll be 2 groups of 5 and 1 group of 4. Okay, you have plenty of hands on deck. So, you know, if you have a lecture some other time on Thursday, there's no problem stepping out to go to that and then coming back when you're done. That's, you know, that's why we have teams. Okay. Having a lab that's in the middle of that's going to go 3 or 4 hours is a challenge. But having it afterwards is not going to be a problem.
Okay, great.
But you just make sure that your group is okay coming in early and getting yourself going. But that won't be an issue until October.
Okay.
And our labs for the next 2 weeks will, in all likelihood, not go the full time. So. Anything else? Not? Guys, have a great rest of your day.